Hello friends, welcome to this second part of Unit 1 of the subject Database Management Systems. In the first part, we have discussed Introduction to DBMS and the problems of file processing system. In this video, we'll discuss the characteristics of DBMS, different database users, and some other concepts of DBMS. Characteristics of DBMS. You can see the slide here. Self-describing nature of the database. The database management system has the facility to maintain the catalog. Catalog means which stores the metadata, and using the metadata it can define its own structure, its own constraints and its own properties. That's why we can say DBMS has the self-describing nature. Similarly, the data and programs are independent of each other. In the previous video, we have seen that in file processing system, the data and programs are dependent on each other because the programs are written based on the structure of the data. But in this case, the DBMS, the programs and data are completely independent of each other. That is, the program data and program operation independence exist. That is, there is one insulation between the program and data. There is no dependence. It supports multiple views of data. That is, as there may be many users interacting with the DBMS, and different users has different requirements. That's why it supports multiple views of the data, right? Similarly, it supports sharing and multi-user transaction processing. Many users may require the data at the same time, so it supports concurrent access to the database. So these are the different characteristics of the DBMS software. Coming to the different types of database users, you can see these database users are broadly categorized into two categories. One is actors on the scene and workers behind the scene. In the actors on the scene, there are so many other types like DBA, database administrator, database designer, and end users. System analysts or software engineers are also actors on the scene. And other category, database system designers, tool developers, operators, and maintenance personnel. They are known as workers behind the scene, right? So actors on the scene, the DBA, who is the central controller of the DBMS, who is responsible for authorizing access to the database, for coordinating and monitoring its use, and for acquiring software hardware resources whenever required. Similarly, the database designers are responsible for identifying the data to be stored in the database and for choosing appropriate structures to represent and store this data. They usually interact with the people, end users, to develop a view of the database that meets all um, the data and processing requirements of the groups or group of people. End users. The end users are again classified into four categories. The casual end user. The casual end user occasionally access the database, but they may need different information each time. High level managers, occasional web browsers, they come into this category. Naive or parametric end users, their main job or functionality is uh, based on querying and updating the database. They use different types of queries and updates um, that can be done using different programs which are already developed and tested. Bank tellers, reservation clerks, airline reservation clerks, they fall into this category. Sophisticated end users, they are usually engineers, scientists, business analysts, and who are usually very much familiar with the facilities of DBMS, right? And standalone users are those users who maintain a personal database uh, in an isolated independent system, and who has nothing to do with other systems or other applications. Software engineers or system analysts or application programmers, they determine the requirements of the end user, especially the naive users, and develop specifications for canned transaction, means already compiled transactions, and that should meet their requirements. Application programmers implement these specifications as programs, then they test, debug, document, and maintain these canned transactions. Canned transaction means already compiled transactions, so that the end users can easily use that. Such analysts and programmers are called as software engineers. Similarly, another category of users are workers behind the scene. You see, database system designers and implementers, they design and implement the DBMS modules and interfaces as a single software package. Because the DBMS has different modules, different components. One is for query processing, one is to implement the catalog, one is for accessing and buffering the data, one is for controlling the concurrency, one is to handle the security. So many modules, and all these modules are developed and packaged by these users called as system designers and implementers. The tool developers, they design and implement different tools, software packages that facilitates the database modeling and design, system design, and improved performance. The operators and maintenance personnel, they are responsible for actual running and maintenance of the hardware and software environment for the database system, right? So these are the two different categories of database users, and you may get a long question uh, on this based on this topic. So in the last video we have already seen what are the disadvantages of file processing system. If you get a question about advantages and disadvantages of DBMS, you can simply write these points and elaborate them. Redundancy reduced, because redundancy is reduced, inconsistency is also eliminated. The data can be shared among multiple users, that is concurrency control techniques are used. Standards are enforced, security enforced, integrity constraints can be maintained so easily, providing backup and recovery services, providing multiple interfaces, pro- isolation problem eliminated, that is the data and program are not dependent on each other, and all the transactions possess the atomicity property. So these are the advantages, and coming to the disadvantages, it's little bit complex software, size is more, that's why cost is also more. You need additional hardware to maintain larger databases, and you need to keep track of the performance, you need manpower for that, and higher impact of failure, and if failure occurs you need to recovery from the failure, so backup also required. For backup, again you need extra hardware. So these are the disadvantages of DBMS, but because we have eliminated most of the problems of file processing system, that's why we cannot will not consider these disadvantages as bigger problems, because these disadvantages can be handled easily, right? That's why DBMS is popularly used, right? And these are the different areas where we can use the DBMS banking system to store the customer details, account details, loan details. Similarly, in airlines, details of the aeroplanes and customers, traveling details, universities, details of the students, subjects, teachers, departments, credit card transactions, different details of the customers, their transactions, telecommunication, number of calls made, details of the consumer, uh, different tariff plans. All these are maintained in telecommunications. Similarly, finance, manufacturing, and human resources. And so these are the different areas where we can use the database management system software. Right. In the next class, in the next video, we'll discuss the three schema architecture, which is a very important topic in database management system. Thank you very much.